Well, my name is Setsu Oda. That was my maiden name. I come from Duncan, Vancouver Island. Um, you wanted to know my family, how many brothers and sisters I have? I have two older sisters, an older brother, and two younger brothers. And we were all born in BC. And my mother and father are from Japan. They were born in Japan. Well, it was on a Sunday. We were just teenagers then, and Sunday being holiday, we were going for a bike ride. That's about the only thing we were doing at that time when we heard about Pearl Harbor. When we heard about it, we thought, we kind of were aghast, I guess. We were just surprised that Japan would attack Pearl Harbor, but to tell you the truth, we really didn't know where Pearl Harbor was, and we didn't think it would affect us in any way. Now I think that December the 7th, 1941 just isn't all our Japanese Canadians' memory. Soon after the war, they wanted to, as you know, evacuate all the Japanese from the coastline, and they didn't know where to put us. So they had the, I think it's called the Pacific National Exhibition Park in Vancouver, where there were a lot of big buildings that they could put us. They had to clear out the stalls for the animals for us and put bunk beds there for us. So we left in April 1942. We went on a ship called SS Adeline, I think it was. And there were many Japanese there, about over 400 Japanese from the Vancouver Island, Chemainus people, Hillcrest people, you know, little towns all up there. So when we went on the boat, we met a lot of girls there, and then we traveled there and got to Hastings Park, and from the docks they took us by bus to Hastings Park, and we were registered there and told us where we would be sleeping. And when we went into this building, this building was full of beds, just from wall to wall beds, bunk beds, and there were other people that from Nanaimo. Up Island, I think people were there already, and they had their places, and they had sheets and bedspreads just to partition off their stalls so they can have a bit of privacy. And in that building, there were just women and children under 12. There was another building that had the fathers or the single men and boys over 12 there. So since my younger brothers were, I guess there were 8 and 3 or something. They were still with my parents. And there was my older sister, she was married, and my other sister and myself, my mom, and my 2 younger brothers, and we had these bunk beds. And we slept, the kids slept on top, and the older ones slept at the bottom. We also had to go and line up to the mess hall for all our meals, breakfast, lunch, and supper. Rain or shine, we're outside, and there would be people outside looking at us and calling us Japs and things like that, but we tried to ignore that. We didn't like the food, naturally, because there was just a big, they just cooked for so many people there, and but we did the best we could. And also there was a case of one night getting up in the middle of the night, rushing to the bathroom because I had diarrhea, and not only that, but found all the stalls were taken up by other ladies and girls and children, because we all had, I don't know whether it was something we ate or what, but we all had diarrhea, and that was quite an experience there. There were fun times there too. We would roller skate, and if we can find someone that had a pair of roller skates, we'd borrow them. At least I did, and we'd roller skate along the roads because there were no cars there. It was just an exhibition park, so it was a park. And I remember having mumps, and we had to go into the isolation, and my mother had to go in there with my kid brothers because they had gotten it, and then I had it too, so I was older, so I went by myself there, but we were in there for 2 weeks with the mumps. And there were basketball games, and there were things that we did. We also went to school, correspondence course, and they tried to do the best they could. But of course, it was impossible to look after all those people. I was young enough, too young, I guess, to feel bitter. I think all that bitterness comes out after, when you grow up, and then you feel, why did they do this to us? But I think, sure, we were, we wondered why we were treated this. Well, we knew why. It's because we were Japanese, but we were Canadians also. I think people can't understand that we were born in Canada. Most of us, my mom, my dad were naturalized, and we regard this as our home. Sure, we look different, but Canada is many cultures, so we all think of this as home. So there is bitterness, but I think at that point, when we were in Hastings Park, there wasn't all that bitterness at that time. Mm-hmm. Well, from Hastings Park, of course, we couldn't stay there, so they were building these camps in interior BC for us, so that there would be some place for us to go until the end of the war. We were in Hastings Park from April to September. In September, we were, by train, we went into the interior BC, and there were these the ghost towns, which were mining towns, and the old buildings were there, and some of the earlier people were there in those, so they built these, I guess, little shacks there for us. They weren't insulated or anything. So we were there. We went there in September. We had to stay in these army tents for a month or so, and it was September going on to October, so it was getting cold there. And my younger brother had caught a cold, and we didn't know whether it was a whooping cough or just a very bad cold, but he did have a bad cold there. And again, we had to go to the mess halls there until the houses in Lemon Creek, which is about 7 miles from Slocan City. And there were also the other camps there, Popoff, Bay Farm, and then Lemon Creek was. And I think Lemon Creek was quite one of the bigger camps that they had for us. There was, at one point, what did I say? About 4,000? I can't remember how many people were there at one point. I have it somewhere.
Yeah, that's fine.
Well, when I turned 16, I went to the RCMP office and had to get my registration card with thumbprints and identification if you had any occupation. And you had to carry that with you wherever you wanted to go. Also, if you wanted to travel, you also had to get a permit before you can travel. So I guess we were kind of virtually prisoners right in the camp. But there were the RCMPs, but there were no guards or anything, walking up and down. There wasn't any barbed wire or anything, but there were mountains, and there was no place where you can escape. Why did we have to get registered? I guess so they can keep tabs on you once you turn 16, but it was something you had to do. So in those days, we did what we were told. They said you had to do this, so we did it with no questions asked. We just did it. No, you weren't allowed to study Japanese.
Oh, yeah?
No, anything Japanese was just prohibited. You couldn't have cameras because they were scared we were going to take some pictures and, I don't know, send it to Japan or something. No radios because they thought shortwave and we might spy, like not myself, but men. So there were schools for the younger kids. There was schools for high schools, but it was mostly correspondence course for the high school students. But for the younger kids, there was schools and there were teachers that maybe had high school education that wanted to teach the kids, and they were pretty good, the kids. Myself, my mother figured going to high school, there may not be a future in just going to high school in the evening, so she wanted me to learn something that would come in handy. So there was a lady that was teaching sewing, so I went to that for a couple of years and learned how to sew. Well, there was, I guess, all the Issei's, especially the first generation, didn't think that Japan would lose the war because they had never lost the war, so they figured, I don't know how, but they had figured that they wouldn't lose the war. But we didn't really talk about that too much. We were younger, and our parents might have talked with by themselves or when they were with their own, but to us children, they didn't speak too much about those things. Well, we left Lemon Creek in 1946. We arrived here in July, and we came by train. And my sisters were already here, so they came to meet us, and we just thought it was a nice city and tried to get a job, but not having the education. And after the war, there wasn't that much jobs, so I got a job in the laundry, Algoma Laundry. It isn't there anymore, but I was there, worked there for a while, and we lived in the East End. And in the East End, there were a lot of different ethnic people. There were Italians and Ukrainians, and they just took us as who we were, and I don't think there was any objections about us moving in there. There were quite a few Japanese families at first living in the East End, but as we got older and got married, we all came out, and as you can see, there is no one place that all Japanese are grouped together in Thunder Bay, or you won't even find that, like a Jap town or a Japanese town in any of the bigger cities, because I think that's the way it started. They didn't like us being in one place, so now we are dispersed all over the place. Mm-hmm. But as far as discrimination, no, there might be the odd kid that might say something as you see them on the street, but not. We have Hakushin friends, and everybody has some prejudice, whether you're white or Japanese. There might be things said. I know when Japan first entered the war, my brother-in-law was certainly telling my dad that they're never going, like Japan is not going to win the war because they're too small a country. But until Japan entered the war, they tried to teach us the good things about being Japanese, to be proud of who you are. But I guess we're in Canada, so we live like Canadians, try to be like Canadians as much as we can, more than Japanese.